Hello, welcome to this video. As per usual, long time no talk, but let's all just get used to that. Maybe that's not the best thing to ask of your audience, but whatever. So today's video is a little bit different. I definitely feel more insecure about uploading this video than I have any other autistic video, even the ones that are very embarrassing to me and I refuse to look back on. Today I'm basically going to be talking about unexpected things or things that I don't really hear many people talk about that may come from the death of a loved one. There's some prefaces to this video, and if you frankly don't give a shit, I totally understand. You can skip to this time and I'll just get into it. The main reason why I'm not super comfortable uploading this video is because I'm like, where do I have the entitlement to talk about losing someone, to talk about death? I'm far from an expert from it. And a big reason why I haven't been uploading on this channel recently is because of my mom's death, her passing. Maybe most people know this, I don't know, but my mom died on July 28th, 2020. She passed away of ovarian cancer. She was dealing with it for about 2 years until it took her life. My mom is incredibly important to me, and so this was something that was very hard for me, and is still very hard for me. And it's pretty much the only thing that I've been thinking about. And because of this occupying my mind, and because of COVID, and just because of me working from home and all these other situations, my autism and my experiences with autism and all that kind of stuff has definitely not been in the forefront of my mind. And because I want this channel to be videos that I make when I actually feel impassioned to, and not just kind of because I'm trying to fit a schedule or because I'm trying to do this, and this, I haven't wanted to film any videos about autism because the relevant and the only relevant thing in my brain has been my mom's passing. Also, another reason why I feel uncomfortable filming this video is because I know that there are so many people in this lifetime that have dealt with so much more death than I have. I lost my grandparents. I've lost all my grandparents by the time I was 19, but I think it's different when you lose somebody that's a little bit older because it's kind of more expected and more accepted. So it's a very different experience going through the death when it's somebody older versus when it's somebody a little bit younger. My mom was 59, so she was older than a lot of people, and I'm 23 when my mom passed, so I was also older than a lot of people. I know there's some people that lose people really close to them before the well before the age of 18, and that is a whole other experience that I know I can't even imagine. So that's why I feel uncomfortable talking about this, because you know, I'm not the end-all be-all of knowing about death and loss by any stretch of the imagination. But I have some things that I want to say and I want to express, and maybe this will help some people, maybe this will resonate some people, and hey, honestly, maybe it'll help me in getting it out and talking about it selfishly. Also, completely unrelated to the topic of this video, but I am going to be starting a new YouTube channel pretty soon. It's all about things astrology related. It's called Astro Freak. It'll be left in the down bar. I'm spending a lot of time working on it. I have a TikTok. I sell birth chart readings on astro-freak.com. I have an Instagram. I have a bunch of stuff going on. It's all down below if you want to check it out. If not, no worries. And yeah, this is a very depressing video and a very hard video for me to film. And I've been putting it off just because I feel like, you know, I only lost my mother not even a year and a half ago, and it still feels very new. So it feels like it's not something that I'm like, am I prepared to talk about this? Do I know everything about the situation yet to be able to talk about it? I don't know. I literally have no idea, but for whatever reason, I felt compelled to film this, so I figured that was better indication to film it than anything, I guess. I don't know. And especially because this is the time of COVID, I'm sure so many people have lost loved ones really close to them because of the pandemic. My heart goes out to you. My heart goes out to everybody that's lost a loved one and lost somebody close to them. My DMs are always open, and just know I'm here with you and that I feel it and that I understand. The first thing that's been pretty much the most relevant to me, and the thing that I've been having the most trouble dealing with for sure, is having regrets about the situation as far as how you acted, maybe how it was handled, just events and things that happened surrounding that loss. I am straight up the kind of person that has regrets in life. And that's definitely a problem of mine. I definitely have a very negative view of nostalgia. I'm definitely not somebody that looks back at things through these rose-tinted glasses of positivity. I probably do the opposite and look at things through these rose-tinted glasses of complete negativity and suffering. And so this definitely comes into play. And especially the rhetoric that we're always told of like, no regrets, you can't have regrets, you know, it already happened, so what's the point, da-da-da-da. And it's like, while all that is valid, and I absolutely don't think you should have regrets in life because it doesn't solve anything, it doesn't change anything, I completely understand, that doesn't change the fact that I have them. You know, that doesn't make me stop feeling that yucky feeling. It makes me probably sometimes feel worse that I feel that feeling, you know, because now I'm not only feeling that, but I'm also judging myself for having these regrets. And, you know, when you hear all the time, like, I have no regrets for the past, oh, that's ridiculous, da-da-da-da, it's like, okay, so I'm just alone in this. So I just kind of want to say, if you have regrets about how you handled the situation, about what you did, especially if this is your first big loss, like, there's no rule book on how to handle somebody passing. And especially if you're watching this video, you may also be autistic. And I know that I have no tools on how to handle emotional situations. So this was something that I really fumbled through. And I really feel like there were times that I displayed or came across as different to what I was really feeling. And there are a lot of awkward moments that I keep in my head, and a lot of things that I wish I didn't say, or things that I wish I did say, or ways that I came across to my family, or things like, notice how none of this actually has to do with my mom and the person that I actually lost. And that's a big thing, is like, death is for the living. You know what I mean? In the sense of like, this is kind of a tangent, but it's like, my mom is gone. She's not, this isn't affecting her. You know, death can be a very selfish thing in a lot of ways, because the person that actually died is just gone. They're not thinking about it. They're not dwelling about it. They're not really dealing with it once they're gone. Of course, they're, you know, like, especially if your parent has cancer or is sick, they're grappling with it all the time, and that's a whole other experience. But once they're gone, they're gone. And now it's kind of resting on the live ones to be the ones experiencing it, and to the ones who are going through this transformation. And so, yeah, death is a very, very selfish thing, I have to say. And that's not even necessarily like I'm trying to pin a negative on the word selfish. Anyway, so yes, these regrets. If this is your first real, you know, close to you death that you've experienced, you know, death of somebody at a younger age, maybe, you don't have those tools. And especially if you're like under the age of like 13 or something, where like you haven't gone through puberty, you're in your single digits still, you probably, and I've heard this as from many stories of people, you probably will not understand the permanency of the situation going on. And I know that when my mom was in her last days, I remember sitting there and thinking like, I don't know what to do, but I know this isn't it. Like, I know I should be doing something, and I know what I'm doing is wrong, but I don't know what that right thing is. I know that's something that I dealt with being a little bit older and more mature going through this death, but then also not having the toolbox of knowing what the fuck to do, if that makes sense. I think a perfect example of this, especially when you're younger, is, if you guys know who Azealia Banks is, she lost her father when she was like 2 or 3 or 4, something along those lines. And she was talking about in an interview that when she went to his funeral, it was open casket, and all that she could say was like, ew, dad's got a booger in his nose, dad's got a booger in his nose. Because when you're little, you just don't understand those things. And so definitely a big thing that might even haunt you more than the actual loss of that person is how you handled that situation. And what you did also, if it's an abrupt death, how much you interacted with that person, or how you interacted with that person right before their death. And sometimes those regrets can haunt you more or equal to the actual loss of that person. I know that memories of things that I regret doing, or things that I regret saying, or especially things that I regret not saying, that's a huge thing, play in my mind over and over and really haunt me and really cause me a lot of troubles. And going off of that, just like how you might have a lot of regrets on how you handled the situation and the situation preceding it and all that kind of stuff, or afterwards or whatever it may be, you also might have some problems with how some family members or people close to you or close around you handled the situation as well. And as much as you might think, or I guess maybe I might think or assume that death in the family would bring a family closer, or like death of a friend in a friend group would bring that friend group closer, because we now have all this joint experience and there's some relatability and pain there. Your family might break apart or distance each other even more because of the situation, because how someone handles death is pretty huge, and there might be a lot of conflict within a friend group or a family on how each individual handles the death, and that can draw you apart, which was something that I would have never honestly guessed or expected before this experience. And that can be something really hard. That doesn't happen with everyone in my family. For example, my father and I have definitely gotten closer because of the situation. You know, we've even lost some family friends because of how they've dealt with it and how we might view as a disrespect. I'm not saying it is, this is just in my eyes. I understand that this is my bias, but you know, it is my bias and I can stand by it, and so fuck you, you know what I mean? Especially if you've experienced the loss of somebody during COVID, whether it was due to COVID or not. If it's during COVID, that is definitely going to affect the experience, whether it's literally just travel bans and people can't get places, or if it's everyone's view on COVID, or whether it's the kind of treatment you get at the hospital. I know that whenever my mom was in the hospital, we weren't allowed to visit her. I had to sneak in. I had to find a lot of, I guess, illegal ways to see my mom and support her and get food to her, for example, while she was in the hospital. And that only causes more stress. I don't know how to put this because this is very personal, and I don't want you to think that I'm not somebody who takes COVID very seriously. In fact, at some points during this time, I think I took COVID too seriously, and that has to do with some of my regrets as well. But there were some people who took it even more seriously than I did, or sometimes their logic doesn't line up. They might really not be there for you or for the person during their passing, and that can be something, like I said, that brings a wall in between that relationship, even after that person has passed. Dealing with a death is already hard, and dealing with a death during the pandemic, I think, has made it even harder. Also, I feel like it might have even lessened it because everybody's dealing with tragic and hardship, that it can feel like deaths are more insignificant, and that can really put a lot of weight on the person dying and the people around them. Another really uncomfortable thing that might happen, or I mean, probably will happen after somebody dies, is dealing with the financial end of it. Boy, does that fucking suck. Dying can be very, very expensive, especially, you know, if that person is put in the hospital put on some kind of treatment, or just at all in any fashion wants a funeral or a celebration of life, or, you know, the body has to be dealt with somehow, and that equals money. And that can be a really fucking terrible thing to be dealing with and to be thinking about while you're dealing with all the emotional stress and depression of that person passing. And one day, a few months after her death, I got a check that came from what my mom gave me when she passed. And that was something that it was very weird to confront and very painful to confront. And I'm sure especially if you're somebody that's younger, I know that if you're under 18, you get some sort of like life insurance check every month or something along those lines. I don't know. But that can feel really gross because it feels like, oh yeah, your parent has passed, or like someone close to you has passed. Here's the financial value that their life equated to, that will replace all those years of love. And it's like a slap in the face. And as much as I am appreciative of that money and very thankful for it, I also have not touched it. It feels like anything that I spend that money on needs to be equivalent to her. Like, I don't want to spend that money on anything the slightest bit insignificant, like with a new iPhone or something like that, because it's like, is this a good enough purchase to equal my mother? Almost like, does my mom equal this new iPhone? No, my mom's far superior than this new iPhone. You know, so it's it's sticky. It can sometimes feel like a really gross exchange. Also, something that me and my father dealt with a lot was like, this is a little bit of a tangent, but it is our insurance. My mom was the person who had a job that gave us health insurance, and so we lost all of our insurance. But not only that, we dealt with all these issues because my mom passed. Like, things don't get passed along as much as you think they would. Things get very messed up when people die, and there's a big chance you could lose money or lose track of money, or there can be a lot of miscommunications and a lot of things can go wrong. You know, my bank account got closed without me knowing because I didn't know this, but when I opened my bank account, I was really little. I was well under the age of 18, and my mom was a co-signer on it, because duh. And they closed that bank account, and I didn't know. What? What? You know, they didn't really tell me. And for example, like the insurance thing. We tried to get more insurance, and there was like all these confusions and these issues. We were supposed to get insurance for another 6 months after my mom passed, but they just stopped the insurance without telling us. We didn't get any notification, and there's been so many issues that even though we pay for insurance now, I'm always getting knocked off of it. I'm always getting told that I don't have insurance. In fact, I went to go to the doctors recently, and they said that I wasn't covered, Jayne Crashin was covered. And I was like, well, Jayne Crashin died over a year ago, and I've been alive this whole time, so I don't know how she can be covered and not me. There's gonna be a lot of crazy, annoying shit like that that you have to deal with. So that's a real annoying kind of day-to-day thing that it's like, wow, I'm having to make all these professional phone calls and be on hold all the time and deal with all this shit and be reminded about this horrible emotional thing that happened, and I'm just getting punished for it over and over financially as well. Like, it can just feel like they're striking from all ends, really. Another thing that might happen that can also kind of tear families or friends apart is that people deal with death in different ways, obviously. And with death comes the issue of what do we do with all these people's things. And there are some people that want to address the situation immediately and do an estate sale or go through it or sort through it and throw it out or do this or do that. And they want to just like, go, let's do this. And then there are other people like that's too emotionally heavy for them, where it's really hard, the idea of getting rid of things. But I understand on the other end that some people really need to act upon that for closure and that kind of stuff. But also I'm like, well, I'm straight up, I'm not ready for closure. I don't know what the fuck, like a day or so after my mother dies, I'm fucking not ready for closure. I'm gonna let myself feel this a little bit first, but whatever, teach their own. It can be really hard because I know that just like as I was just basically kind of talking shit about how people go through things too fast, I know that there's also the other end of the spectrum where you just leave it to gather dust, and that's not healthy either. And so it's really hard to know when and how to go through things. And also, like I said, that can drive a wedge in between loved ones as well, which is frustrating. But also, you don't want these emblems around almost of somebody's past kind of just haunting you day in and day out. That can also be very, very painful. So whichever way you look at it, it's really hard to know when is the right time and when is not. The next thing that can be really hard to deal with is like the funeral or the celebration of life or the absence of a funeral. I've been to a few funerals. My mom had a celebration of life. And I also know that my grandma didn't want a funeral, and we had absolutely nothing for her. And all that stuff can be hard, but I think the most important thing is just remember that this is not for you. This is for the people that have passed. But it's also, I think, weirdly important to remember that this is also going to be an event for the people mourning the person. So if you just make it about religion or just make it about tradition, that loses the personality. So it's a weird balance. Whatever it is that you have or don't have for the person, it's never going to feel like enough. And it probably won't ever feel like it does them enough justice. I know I put a lot of time and effort and work into these videos that I made for my mom, and I really wanted to, and that's a lot of the reason why there was a big lapse in content from me, was because I was just going through old home videos of my mom and converting them and making them into these 3 different videos. One of them is actually up if you're interested. I'll link it down below. I debated a lot about putting it online or not, because I know, again, something that you don't normally do, but I guess I just always put myself out there. I know that might be really weird for people, but I feel definitely a lot more comfortable talking about things. And if it weren't for people's views on what you can and can't talk about, I definitely would talk even more candidly about things. But I debated a lot about whether or not I should put up that video, but again, it's from my mom, and my mom is a performer. I think that my mom would prefer it if I did put it up than if I didn't, because I think that she wants people to see her, and she wants people to see her enjoying life, especially when she lost her life with cancer, and the last thing that people knew of her was, 2 years just straight up of suffering, really. And she mentioned many times that she doesn't want to be remembered for battling cancer, and it feels like she lost some battle she didn't even want to start, and it's kind of offensive, like she didn't fight hard enough, which is just an absurd thing to say. And so I put it up because I think it's important to keep the memory of her alive. I'm just really proud of her. So yeah, you're welcome to watch that. And I understand if you have some issues or weird feelings about me posting it. It's hard to get past that no matter what funeral or celebration of life or lack thereof, it'll never feel like enough. But as long as you feel like you've put in some time and effort, and I think it is important to make something or say something and cater that thing that you make or say to you, I think that's important. Like, I know that if I would have written a speech, that wouldn't have been in honest and earnest, and it wouldn't have been very good. I know I can display myself and my feelings a lot better through video, so just kind of cater those things to what you love and what that person wants to be remembered as, instead of what you've been told to do at a funeral. Another huge thing about the loss of somebody and dealing with that loss is that I think that the 8 stages of grief are pretty much bullshit. I think that they're valid in the sense of like, those are 8 things that you experience as you go through grief, but I do not think, I completely disagree with the thought that grief is linear. I think that's just an absurd idea that I think hurts so many people. I hate the idea that the strongest that you'll feel the loss for somebody is the day that they die. Like, yes, that is going to be extremely traumatic and very, very hard, especially depending on how they died. If it was, who knows, But if you really loved that person and they were somebody that was very important to you in your life, you're gonna miss them more the farther away that death is from you. Like, I knew when my mom passed that, yes, I missed her that days or that week immediately after she died, but there's also, and this is going to sound really maybe insensitive, but like, well, I had just seen her a week ago, and I've gone weeks without seeing my mom. And because of that, I understood that like, the hard part is yet to come. The hard part is when I'm older and I start forgetting her face, I start forgetting her voice, I haven't talked to her in months or years, I've gone through many life experiences without her. I'm sorry I'm speaking so specifically to my mom, but you can put the loss of your person or those pronouns in place of it. I just knew that it's like, the older I get, the harder it's gonna be, because it's the longer since I've seen her last. And the older that I get, the less she'll know of my life. And that, to me, is way more painful than the few days after she died. Especially that's true if the person is ill, physically or mentally, when it's a little bit more, I guess, expected. I think this is more relevant than if something is sudden, because if it's sudden, there's a lot more shock there. But things only get harder. I hate that phrase, like, it gets better. Shit, bitch. No, it doesn't. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. And I know that has to do with high school, but that shit does not get better. Anyways, but that's just my negativity. I think that it's really toxic, the idea that grief is linear. You're already feeling this feeling, and now there's this added thing of you're judging that you're feeling this feeling, which only makes it worse. This shit ain't straightforward. You are going to have ups and downs, and one day you may feel fine about things because you're distracted, and then the next week you're not. So you're unable to do anything but think about it, I just think the idea of these 8 stages is really toxic and inhibiting, and kind of is a little bit judgmental on the people who don't go through grief in that way. And especially if you're autistic, you probably have a very different way of dealing with things and processing things. And it can make you feel even more alienated and more foreign to everyone else when you're not dealing with things in the way that we're told we should be. I know this is very negative because I'm basically saying like, oh, you think it's bad when someone dies? Just wait for a few more years. It's gonna get worse. I know this is really terrible, but I feel like if you kind of don't have this knowledge, then it's going to be, like I said, very painful when it does get worse. I mean, maybe that can be seen, I guess, in a positive light, that person was obviously somebody very important to you and impacted you greatly. And that shows that person was such an amazing, great person because, you know, with their absence, your heart grew even fonder of them. So as much as that's really painful, I think that can be some validation of like how amazing and how great and how purposeful that person's life was. And also, you know, nobody wants to be forgotten. It's good to honor those people. And so love that you cared for somebody that much, that you're still feeling those feelings. That's amazing. A lot of people don't even get to love somebody so much. As much as it's so painful for me that I lost my mom, I will never exchange the fact of like those years that I had with her and how amazing of a mother and a person she was. I would never exchange that just to have an easier time dealing with her death. You know what I mean? And I think that's a pretty crazy thing that not many people feel. That the highs were so high that it makes the lows worth it. Another thing about death is I think that we're sold a lot the idea that many times when we lose people, we grow from it. And that's true for many people. Scorpios and 8th house people, for example, I always hear them say like, you know, it's kind of hard because even though this was a very painful experience and very hard, I did grow because of it. I did learn so much because of it. And I'm the person that I am now, and I'm greater because of this loss and this pain, and I've gotten stronger from it. And I think that can kind of be what we all expect to happen. I think especially society kind of expects that as the norm. We love to throw the word survivor around and like praise that word survivor. And I think that we should, obviously. But I think that it can also make those people that don't feel like a survivor and feel like they really kind of succumbed, I don't know what the word is, to that loss and didn't grow from it, it can make them feel worse. You know, I haven't felt this big, better and stronger thing. In fact, I felt the opposite. I feel like my mom helped me grow so much. And without her here, I don't really know what to do or where to go. I definitely feel a major aimlessness that I never felt before. And this just comes from like some people don't have the tools to deal with it and they shrivel up. I think it's amazing seeing people really grow from the experience and become stronger because of their hardships. A lot of times these are people, they deal with it because they've experienced those things from a young age. So they've kind of had no other option but to grow from it, which is a whole other tragic thing in itself, I have to say. I respect those people more than you will ever understand. I think that it's truly a superpower. But yeah, just know that if you feel like you're somebody who struggled and didn't, have this cocoon into butterfly effect from this loss, that you're not alone. And who knows, maybe that experience is yet to come and I'm too impatient because I am impatient. The next thing this isn't super unknown, but I do want to talk about it, is we hear a lot again about people gaining spirituality and gaining religion from a loss. But also in gaining that spirituality, there also is a loss of spirituality that comes from it first, I think. If you're gaining a new perspective or gaining a new belief system or gaining some kind of new spirituality from a death and a loss, what first is going to come is the loss of what you used to believe. And that loss can be very painful. I know that I definitely, when my mother first died, lost so much of my spirituality, lost so much of what I felt like was the magic of life and life's mysteries, and I just felt like things became a little bit more concrete and a little bit more stale. Because, we always hear stories of people, having these paranormal experiences when they've lost somebody. feeling their presence or seeing their ghost or hearing their ghost. Everybody has different views of ghosts and all that stuff, and I think that's kind of fun, and I like that my view on ghosts and paranormal stuff is ever changing, and I think that it should. I know that before my mother passed, I told her that if she was ever around and she wanted to let me know, to flicker the lights on and off. And I went through a big depression because I never felt her. I never, saw the lights flicker on and off. I never had any experiences that made me feel like she was around. It just felt like she was gone. That's it. She was just gone. Nothing, more fun than that. Nothing more interesting than that. I didn't feel her in me. I didn't feel her around. I'm an astrologer. Spirituality is a huge part of what I do. And I did not lose any belief in astrology by any stretch of the imagination. That stayed strong. What might happen instead of, immediately gaining the spirituality and being like, I've found my new religious spiritual path. Oh, we're on this way to enlightenment. You might go through some time of feeling the most disconnected to that stuff than you ever have. In losing so much, you search for something new. And I have searched for something new, and I found something that I feel like I really connect with and I really resonate with. I know this is a very common thing, but gaining and then losing your spirituality will probably be something that you experience. And then the last thing I'm going to say that's more a piece of advice or something that I just feel like you might need to hear is that nobody else is going to give you the time that you need and validate your emotions in the way that you need, but yourself. Yes, hopefully there will be people around you that are understanding and want to give you as much support as possible. Obviously, there are many experiences, many people who don't have that kind of support system. But even if you have that support system, nobody can honor and validate those feelings, and nobody can say, hey, you need exactly 2 hours to experience this right now, so you need to stop what you're doing even though it's a priority and go do it. No, you need to tell yourself that. You need to almost give yourself the entitlement, which I know we think of entitlement as a negative word, but I think that we all need some entitlement to ourselves, to our lives, and to our feelings, because if you don't, then you'll never give yourself the power that you need if you're somebody who's especially close to the loved one, everybody's going to be feeling that, but probably nobody's going to be feeling it as much as you. And it can feel very invalidating that nobody's feeling it as much as you. And it can be really frustrating, but you cannot let that get to you. You cannot judge yourself or judge things or get mad at others and that kind of stuff. That's a waste of time. You need to just be like, well, if they don't give that person the time and give them as much honor as I think they should, then I'm going to allow myself to do that. You can't be concerned about how others grieve. I mean, you can be to a certain extent. I've definitely cut some specific people off because I found things disrespectful, and that's my bias, and I'm going to honor that bias, and that's okay. But I cannot spend my time dwelling about it. I need to spend my time, instead of dwelling on that, honoring her and honoring the emotions. That's a much more productive way to spend your time. And especially if you're somebody with 8th house or Scorpio planets, nobody's going to be feeling it as much as you, and that can also be very isolating. And don't judge yourself for that either. Let yourself feel those things and let yourself go through those things. But also don't completely isolate yourself. Life is still going on after that person has passed. And so if you miss out on new opportunities, if you miss out on new connections with people, connections with others because you're so stuck on that loss, in the future maybe somebody passes and you'll be like, man, remember that time that I was mourning that other person so much that I then missed out on their life and being present in their life. If anything, death should teach you to be more present. I know it taught me that lesson. And the last thing that I'm going to say is something that I don't have an answer for, and I'm more asking you guys, has anybody dealt with some crazy ass dreams? I know that I mentioned earlier that I didn't see her around. There was nothing in the physical that I was experiencing with my mom, but that's because I wasn't honoring the dreams that I was having with her and seeing those as experiences of her being close to me and honoring those. But I've had some crazy ass dreams that have to do with my mom, and so much so that I wake up and my whole day is thrown off because they can be very painful and very unsettling and off-putting. It might be just some connection to where my subconscious is forcing my conscious to be like, hey, this is something that you haven't been dealing with. This is something that you haven't been thinking about and you've been ignoring it and pretending it doesn't happen. So we're forcing you to confront this in your subconscious. And so you give yourself some time today to honor the emotions like I was just talking about. That's probably what it is. But yeah, does anybody else have any crazy dreams? And if you feel comfortable sharing, I'd like to know, because there can be some crazy parallels with that kind of stuff. So that's the whole video. Thank you so much for watching, and my condolences go out to you if you're experiencing the loss of a loved one. It's so hard and so painful, and it can sometimes feel like there are no answers, and it can be hard to find the acceptance within the fact that there doesn't need to be, you know? But again, just know that I love you and I send my condolences. I hope this video helped you or supported you, or hopefully more than anything validated your loss a little bit more, and possibly the things that you're experiencing within that loss. But I wish you guys all the best in your life and everything. Yeah. Bye.